we like to emphasize, as you have seen in her photos, that Fukushima, everyone tells us that Fukushima is a beautiful place. And it was before March 11th. And also, it was more conservative and more male-dominated community even before March 11th, and economically disadvantaged. So after the March 11th, women are left without viable choices or even have no opportunity to be part of the decision-making processes in order to make proper changes to protect their own children. And thank you so much for talking about some of the issues about domestic violence rising, and Ms. Goto mentioned about that as well, and so on. It's not just about the health effects, but also there are social issues associated with the nuclear disaster, which need to be also discussed and investigated further in the international community. And also, we have to provide the cleaner food supplies to children and women in contaminated areas, and also provide necessary comprehensive medical attention and assistance in order to assist them to relocate to less contaminated areas, so that they'll be able to raise their kids in a safe, healthy environment. And now we have Dr. Patterson, who is a current president of Physicians for Social Responsibility. He visited Japan last year, and he was one of the physicians who visited 5 cities in Japan to conduct the health seminars as well as the health consultations under the supervisions of local Japanese doctors. Please welcome Dr. Patterson.
Thank you very much for inviting me here, and all of us. It's been an eloquent presentation that we've had, and it's always hard at the end to follow up with these things because so many things have been said so eloquently. So I'm going to just give you a couple of basic principles that I think are important here. The first one is, as it says over there, there is no safe dose of radiation. We know that. Even background radiation causes cancers, and that is principle number one. Principle number two is that you can count on the government and the nuclear industry, which are one and the same because they're tied together, to practice the principles of secrecy, keeping this stuff secret from the public, cover-up, which is a polite name for lying about it, and minimization. That they're going to minimize this, and they have economic reasons, they have psychological reasons to do all of this. And the third principle that I want to talk about today is the precautionary principle. And before I do that, I want to give a couple of just vignettes about things that we saw. One was we were in Kawachi, and part of Kawachi's in the forbidden zone. Part of it's about a quarter of the city has been rehabilitated, and we'll talk about that. We visited a housing unit there that was on pavement because they had to pave it over because the radioactivity was so great in the soil there. And I visited an elderly lady who was living in a cubicle that was maybe the size of this area, or maybe a little area from the audience here. And she said to me, "I'm going crazy here because I miss my home, and I'm hoping that I can go back to my home." And this little tiny cubicle on a paved area, and that's her life now. And I can tell you, it's gonna be her life for the foreseeable future. And part of the reason is that this cesium is not gonna go away. And one of the reasons for that is you saw all those beautiful forests up there. Those are all fir trees. A lot of them are pine trees. And pines accumulate cesium. They take it up out of the soil and suck it up and goes into their needles. And it really gets concentrated in the pollen that's produced from plants like pines. And so springtime is coming. We're going to have high pollen levels there, and that cesium gets redistributed and just goes back into the environment, gets cycled around again and again and again. How many of you know the song "The Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round"? You sing that to your kids, you know. And so
When the ground goes round.
I've created the part of that song that is, the cesium goes round and round, round and round, round and round. The cesium goes round and round, and it never goes away. And we know that from Chernobyl. The levels of cesium in the soil around Chernobyl has not decreased in 26 years since Chernobyl. So we should be practicing the precautionary principle. I talked about principles. There's no safe dose of radiation, the secrecy, cover-up, and minimization, and now the precautionary principle. And that is that if we as scientists cannot reach a consensus that something is harmful, then the precautionary principle states that the polluting group, whether it's a company or a government or whatever, has to prove ahead of time, before they expose people to that chemical or radioactive material or whatnot, that it is not harmful. That's the precautionary principle. Well, what the government is doing in the nuclear industry, it's like if you had 10 kids at the top of a set of stairs, and you said, well, we don't know how badly they're going to get damaged if they fall down the stairs here, you know, these little kids. The precautionary principle would say, let's put a gate there and maybe do some experiments with dummies or animals or something to see what happens when they fall down the stairs. Instead, the government and the nuclear industry are saying, nah, you know, we don't really think they're going to get hurt. Let's leave the gate off, and maybe we'll put a couple pillows at the bottom or something, but let's see what happens to them as they fall down the stairs. And that's exactly what's happening now. So I think that we need to practice the precautionary principle, and we need to move people out of these areas and not expose them to radiation and see what happens to them 20, 30, 40 years and even generations to come. That's immoral to do. And so I would echo what our other speakers have said. We need to close these plants down. And Japan has a golden opportunity here to lead the world in moving to alternative energy. And every time they talk about keeping these plants, every time they talk about making nuclear weapons from the plutonium that they have and things like that, it just is a major setback in the process that we need to do as human beings, which is to move forward with clean, safe energy, get rid of nuclear power, get rid of nuclear weapons, and protect our women and children. Thank you very much.